And so I pulled over to get into the parking lot, and it's pitch black. And I go to the night deposit thing where you lift the screen up and then you put the thing in and you pull it down. And there's a guy there with like a sharp, it looked like a spoon that he had sharpened. I'll never forget this. And I knew it was metal, it wasn't plastic. And he said, "Hey man, give me the bag with the cash. Give it to me." And there was nobody else around. And I just thought to myself, if you do this, you may not be able to come back fully when it comes to the ability to keep the agency running and fulfill the promise to the carriers that you represented. That's a whole nother story, maybe another podcast. And I said, this guy is going to take from you, and what he's taking from you is not something that you can afford to give.
Well, John, thanks for coming on. I feel like we talk to each other all the time. We do. And we work together often.
Yes.
But what we don't talk about often is kind of how you've gotten to be the John that I know. And, you've had great successes in entrepreneurship. It's been quite a journey. What I guess we'll do is we'll start with, what are you doing right now? Can you tell me about the new venture you're on?
Yeah.
And then I think really we got to backtrack to I don't know, childhood and work our way forward. Maybe not that far back.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here. And I'm a very satisfied client of C47. You've helped me a lot. And yes, many of our conversations are 20-second cell phone calls where I'm like, I need this by that and whatever, yeah. And you always get it done.
Well, so we appreciate that, and it's nice to work with you. But so, GetHomeInsuranceNow.com is your business. Describe, what that is and the solution you're offering the world.
Mm-hmm. So it's really nothing different than what I've been doing for almost a quarter century. And that is, I'm engaging with realtors and mortgage professionals to be a resource for them so their clients can get insurance so they can close and everybody can get paid. And GetHomeInsuranceNow.com is something that you created and built last fall.
Yeah.
And it was something that it started to get some real traction in around January, February of this year. And it's basically a link that folks can go to that are in the real estate and mortgage biz or their clients, and they want to get a quote on home insurance. And this is something that I say that it's kind of granular, but it's very focused in on one thing, which is something you're talking about entrepreneurs and things like that. I don't know how successful I am. I think that I'm a speck of sand on someone else's beach. You hear about these people that are billionaires and trillionaires, but one of the things early on for me was taught by one of my insurance bosses when I was coming in, even before I started Tankersley Insurance Group back in 2001. Find out what you do best and repeat it as often as you can. Because in the insurance business, there is a lot of verticals. There's all kinds of different insurances that you can sell. There's all kinds of agencies. There's all kinds of agents. And I found out very early on, Josh, that personal property insurance was something that I enjoyed, I had an affinity for, it was something that I had a passion for. And when I figured out how to engage with real estate and mortgage folks, I honed in on it and I just stuck right in that lane. It's not even a very big lane. It's not I-4. It's like a 2-lane road,
Yeah, and for people out of the area, I-4 is our big artery through Orlando.
Right. So I stayed in that lane, and I stayed focused, and I improved and made mistakes like everybody else does. And, to kind of bring that tugboat to shore, GetHomeInsuranceNow.com, this is the 2.0 version of what I built a lot of my success on in terms of my insurance career. I opened up Tankersley Insurance Group in 2001. I was taught how to market this technique by my insurance boss when I worked for him at Allstate. When I worked at Johnston & Associates as an independent agent in Winter Park, this was something that I stuck with. I didn't venture off into different verticals or avenues in terms of what insurances I should sell. And, Tankersley Insurance Group, I took on a partner, Frank Russo, in 2004, late 04, and we turned it into Florida Insurance Specialist, which was a gigantic brokerage, which was predominantly property insurance. And we did a few other things, but it was mainly focused on property insurance and mainly focused on aiding realtors and mortgage people get insurance for their closings. And when we sold that company to a private equity-backed national brokerage in 2016, they didn't know what to do with us. We were kind of an anomaly when it comes to insurance agencies. It's a wonderful organization. It was a great transaction for Frank and I. But one of the cool things was they said, keep doing what you're doing. And so I worked for them up until August of last year, and I decided that I wanted to do this again. So GetHomeInsuranceNow.com. It's the 2.0 version, but it's not a whole lot new. There's a little bit more technology with it, thanks to you. There's a little bit more streamlining to it. I'm utilizing technology in a way that I probably haven't done in the past. But you know, people ask me all the time. I started in the insurance business in 1994. And I'm 51. I'll be 52 next year. And I've stayed in the insurance business the entire professional career. I didn't take a break. I didn't go sell something else. I didn't go back to school or anything like that. I said, I'm in the insurance business, and this is the one thing in the insurance business that I'm good at. Let's repeat it over and over and over and over again.
Wow. So that actually is interesting. I was listening to a different podcast, and the host was really pushing that longevity concept. It's a character named Alex Hermosi. If anybody listens to his podcast, it's outstanding, and he's going to be a billionaire in no time. And he really believes that, you know, changing focus detracts from your opportunities, and it's not an opening of opportunities, because once you get good at something, and it takes a very long time to get good at something, then you're good at it. And is that kind of your experience that, you know, since 1994 you've been at this, and it seems to me like you've figured it out, you know, is that a secret to success, is spending enough time to figure it out?
Yeah, I think so. And you just said something that was very impactful for me, which is, you know, the more you're in something, the more you're in your lane, instead of being distracted by what could be other things that might mean other opportunities that might be more beneficial to you, if you stay in your lane on what you want to do, you'll find that as you go along and as you achieve more success, more opportunities will come your way from the outside to make you more successful doing what you do the best. That's what has been very beneficial for me. You know, contacts, events, professional organizations, speaking opportunities. All these things fly at me because, generally speaking, people know that John Tankersley knows a little something about property insurance for Florida or home insurance for Florida. And when you become more well-known in your lane, those opportunities, and they come at you more often. And you know, there's lots of folks that are very successful in other areas of the insurance business, and they probably would share a similar story. But that's been very that resonates with me. That's very true what you said.
And it seems to me also it helps sort out the other opportunities, in the sense that people are coming to you because they understand what you represent and where your expertise is, because you've spent so long doing it.
Yeah.
As opposed to people who like you and are trying to find a way to work with you, but maybe don't understand you.
Right.
So they're going to give you all the wrong things. So then you have to disappoint them and say no.
I refer business constantly away from me on things that I'm actually going to be, even though I have an insurance license, it would be a disservice for me to take on that potential client. Right. And really, this is my personal experience, once I figured out the angles, because people do business with you, I've learned through the years, ultimately, because there is some benefit on their side.
Of course.
John's going to get it done. I'm going to get closed on time. And, you know, I don't have to worry when I send the request over. You know, if he can do it, he's going to do it. And so once you figure out the angles and the people that are going to be benefited properly by what you do, it's kind of like a light bulb goes off in your head, you know?
Yeah, and how does that focus feel? I would imagine that feels really good to be able to be that on.
It does. And you can dial back to 2001. I really got into the property and casualty side of the business in early 1999. Prior to that, I worked at MetLife for 4.5 years, and then I worked for Allstate for a little bit, and that's kind of where it got exposed to me. And the reason I was going back in time is when I started Tankersley Insurance Group with 0 policies and 1 employee and 700 square feet space on 1950 Lee Road, the worldwide headquarters of Tankersley Insurance Group. I had 15 grand in my checking account. I had a goal, a daily production goal of what I had to do, but I had a peace about me because I knew how to generate new business. And that really, it's a calmness. I mean, you're exhilarated and scared that you're starting your own agency, but when you know how to go get the business that works for you, it doesn't matter what anything else is around you. It doesn't matter that you've got challenges with capital or challenges with employees or personnel or challenges with the insurance market. If you know how to get the business, everything kind of takes care of itself.
I was tempted for a second to go back to pre-1994, and I think I want to get there, but it occurs to me that you had this great confidence. You started the business in a way where, $15,000 in your checking account, all sorts of overhead that you got to deal with, but you knew that you could handle it.
Yes.
Which is a beautiful thing.
So the sacrifices and the hardships that I went through, it didn't hurt me as bad because I knew at the other side of that, and I knew I was going to get there. Anyways, go ahead.
The ramen noodles taste a little bit better when you're not scared. Right? But then you brought on Frank in 2004, and I truly, I don't know the answer to this. I mean, there was a reason you brought on Frank. And of course, later on, we understand that you two were wildly successful together, which is beautiful.
We were.
But what prompted you to go, I want to bring on the risk of having a business partner? What was the reward you were chasing there?
Well, I will say this, and don't ever show this to Frank Russo. But I will say this, I am more successful and had more success in the insurance business because I was partnered with Frank than if I had gone alone. And to your point, the thought process is understanding opportunities. A few moments ago we were talking about staying in your lane, and then I understood that when Frank came on and bought into Tankersley Insurance Group and became 50-50 owner, and then we turned it into Florida Insurance Specialist, I understood his strengths as it pertained to my weaknesses. And then people for many years said, you guys were kind of like the odd couple, the yin and the yang. And it worked because I'm a razor blade when it came to generating new business. I stay laser focused. I know how to do that. Frank was a tremendous ops guy, and he was very good at process. And once you put the process in place and you have a consistent message out in the field with the marketing and consistent actions, then the numbers will come. And I understood that Frank could do all that. So he and I kind of came together. I will say this, he's retired now. He retired in the summer of 21. And, he enjoyed, their kids are grown, they have wonderful sons. They travel a lot. They've got a magnificent property up in New Smyrna Beach. Frank had the social skills of a barbed wire fence. And I said this in front of him many, many times, right? But I knew that he knew, we both knew the same things, but I knew that he knew how to do some things better than I. And if we could come together, because I was definitely better in the field. I was definitely better at relaying the message of how we can help realtors and mortgage people and the people at large. So I understood, and you have to be humble enough as an entrepreneur to understand that there are pieces to your success. And if you can get, perfect's not on the menu, but if you can get enough of those boxes checked to give you the best opportunity for success, I think we ended up when we sold in July of 16. I want to say we had 70 or 75,000 policyholders statewide.
Wow.
And that's an insurance agency. There's some carriers that didn't have that many policyholders in the state. I wouldn't have gotten to that number without partnering with Frank.
That makes a lot of sense. And how did you encounter Frank? Were you already friends?
We had known each other. I worked for one of his Allstate colleagues. He was another agency that was in the Central Florida area. And Frank was in the same market as my old Allstate boss. Scott Rose was my boss. And Frank knew Scott. And I got to know Frank through working for Scott. And Frank liked the way that I was aggressive when it came to getting new business, and at one point even tried to hire me to come work for his Allstate agency, and he had a very successful Allstate agency, one of the top in the country, not the state, the country. But he contacted me when I opened up Tankersley Insurance Group and said, listen, there's some things that I can't do as an Allstate agent that I think you can do, and let's refer stuff back and forth and, share commissions legally, and, let's work together, because there's some things that you can do that I can't, and that helps me keep my clients. I insulated his book. I didn't try to raid it,
right.
And I also, whenever I did something for him, I made sure that he got, paid on what I said I was going to pay him on that. So he remembered that, and he contacted me and said, I've sold my Allstate agency. At the time, he was in his mid-40s, and he said, I want to become partners with you on an independent agency. And it took us a little bit to put the deal together, but we did. And that's how Frank and I became partners.
That's awesome.
And Frank was a colleague of one of my old Allstate boss, and they competed against each other, and that's how we met.
So it sounds like you took a lot of time, not knowingly. Looking back, there was a lot of time where you could build trust between each other because you did have a working relationship. It wasn't you not casually didn't run into each other. He's not an angel investor with $1 million in his pocket and just like, I see an opportunity, kid. There was time in the trenches a little bit.
Well, he's 11 years older than me, and so he understood, there was an age difference, but he also understood my aptitude for garnering new business, and I understood his expertise when it came to process and managing and things like that. And Frank and I, you could probably say we have a lot more differences than similarities, but one of the core similarities that allowed us to work successfully together is work ethic. That's another reason why I said, okay, I'm going to do this with him, because he and I both understood very early on there's work that goes into this. And when we started FIS, I can tell you some stories where we didn't pay each other. Nobody got paid. And whenever there was a distribution, particularly in the very beginning, when we had our first Altamont location off Westmont Drive, when there was a surplus, Frank and I plowed it right back into the agency, because we knew that we had an opportunity to make something really large and successful. And so we had the same work ethic, and we had the same mindset when it came to that kind of stuff.
So that alignment sounds critical.
It was for me. It was for me. And it was a lot of apples and oranges on a lot of other different things, but those components were the glue. His knowledge, his strengths versus my weaknesses, his work ethic, and our ability to work together.
So let's figure out how you found insurance in the first place. You started in 1994.
Right.
If I recall, you were a college athlete, right?
I was a very mediocre Division II college football player. I actually practiced a lot more than I played. But yes.
Got it. So and that's the day in Leatherheads, right? There's no masks.
We had face masks.
Oh, that's good.
My last football game was 1993.
Okay.
But so, I played high school football. I played college football. My dad was a mechanical engineer and worked for Harris Corporation for 28 years. We lived in Melbourne, Florida. And the funny story of how I got into the insurance business was I went to a job fair. And this is absolutely true. I cannot sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. I went to a job fair because I was graduating college in December of 94. So I think this was like October or early November of 94, because the job fairs, back in those days, the people used to come up and set a booth, and then they knew the people that were coming were college grads or soon to be. And then you learned about their company and if they were hiring or what they wanted. And these two guys, New York Italians, pulled up. I watched them pull up in a BMW. They get out of the car. They are dressed to the nines. They come to the job fair exhibitorship hall where they set up their booth, and it was MetLife. And I was so taken with their confidence and their presence. And I didn't even know at that moment exactly what type of insurance they sold. I just knew, man, that's really cool. So I went up to their booth.
Oh my God.
I cannot make this up. Were you ready for this?
No, I don't know the story. I know like 1/8 of your stories.
So I went up to the booth and I said, how do I get that? I swear to God. And it was Steve Randazzo and Frank Pagan. And they said, come work with us. And so they vetted me. I had to go through a number of different interviews. I had to take all kinds of tests to see if I was a salesman and things like that. And I ended up going through training with them in late November, early December of 94. I graduated from college on a Saturday, and then I went to work for Metropolitan on that Monday. And I think my first, back then they called them IPLs, individual pay levels. It was $300 a week. And you had to outrun your IPL level with commissions. And it was a quarter by quarter thing. And I will say this, talking about things that were very instrumental and very key in your life, in your professional career. It was a really tough place to hang out. Frank Pagan, Steve Randazzo, Paul Iandoli, Nick Damone, you're getting the idea here, right? Tough New York Italian guys who had great work ethic. And the sales training that they provided me, to this day, it still impacts me and what I do. I keep in touch with as many of those guys from the past as I can. Many of them are long well retired. Some of them are not with us anymore. But the training that I got from my first set of insurance bosses was just crucial to my formative years of being tough, understanding what you do, and work ethic. And I say that all the time. And do you want to hear a horror story?
Oh, well, now that you've introduced it, not only do I want to, but I think we need to dim the lights and get flashlights under our chins.
Okay.
All right, yeah.
All right.
Do tell.
So it's not bad, but it kind of speaks to what they asked of you when you worked for them. Hunters Creek was a brand new development off of John Young Parkway at the time. Now, our office was actually in downtown Orlando, right off of Robinson Street. And so it was me and a bunch of other guys. They were all young college kids. We were right out of college. We had just gotten our insurance license. And we predominantly sold life insurance, annuities, and mutual funds, and disability and things like that. But they used to put us in a van and drive us down to Hunters Creek, which is a pretty far stretch from John Young Parkway, right?
That's a hike.
Okay. And we had these life insurance applications on our little clip pad. And they would drop us off at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and they would say, okay, boys, go get them. And whoever doesn't have one of these things filled out when you come back doesn't get a ride back to the agency.
Oh my God.
Okay?
Now, just for listeners, understand, this is Orlando, Florida, so 7 months out of the year, 2 o'clock in the afternoon is either rainy season or the most humid muck you've ever been in.
It's like being in a microwave oven and you had to have a suit on.
Right.
We had the insurance guys, blue blazers, right.
Right.
So what was cool was they would drop us off. So if you go down John Young, on the west side was the Hunters Creek subdivisions, and it was, it was fancy dancy. It was the bee's knees and whatever else you want to say. Well, the Kirby vacuum guys would also door knock while you were going door to door trying to sell life insurance or mortgage protection, and the Kirby vacuum guys were in the same neighborhood, and so you could see them and they could see you. So you had to get to the door before the Kirby guy did because if the Kirby guy got into the house, it was over. Because even back then, those vacuums were massively expensive.
Oh, yeah.
And if you walked by a house and you saw a guy doing like a sample clean on a rug, he looks up and winks at you like, not today, bud. So, there was some excitement to it and some fear, but, I was pretty successful. I made a number of sales by doing that. And what that kind of speaks to the work ethic that a lot of folks need if they're going to, start their own business or, be entrepreneurial. And also, being entrepreneurial does not mean you have to have your own business. You've got C47, but even now you can look, I'm GetHomeInsuranceNow.com. That's a system and a link and a database and content production, all those things. But I'm plugged into a wonderful, wonderful insurance agency that's been around Central Florida for 50 years, Sile Insurance. And I had a fantastic conversations with them once I had resigned from the company in August of 2021. No, 22. And these people were fierce competitors of mine. But they picked up the phone and called me and said, hey, let's come in and talk. And I was able to do that. I was so blessed and honored that I met Jerry Sile, the founder of that agency. And he was part of those initial discussions. But I don't own Sile Insurance. Right. I don't own any stock in that. But I own GetHomeInsuranceNow.com, and I plug it into Sile, and it allows me to do my thing, and it gives me the pride of ownership that I'm doing something with a wonderful organization. So being an entrepreneur, it doesn't mean that you have to have 500 employees and a bunch of buildings with your name on it.
Well, and I think also it's a lot of entrepreneurship is finding your way, and you've got a business model that I've never seen anybody do. And maybe somebody out there is doing it.
There are others.
So you're building a very strong brand. You've got systems and processes in place. Mm-hmm. And you're building a team around those systems and processes. Yep. That's a very multifaceted team. I'm proud that C47 and our people are part of that.
Yep.
But you're building the classic sales team as well.
We are. We just added our so now there's me and 2 other guys in the field. I'm very proud of that. And on the inside, we had initially worked with some of the existing staff that Sile was so gracious in allowing me to work with, and then they gave me some autonomy in February to kind of go get my own folks, and we now have 3 folks on the inside. So we're empire building a little bit, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, well, you went from, this was an idea a year ago, pretty much this month.
Lots of conversations.
We started talking about it, and it wasn't really looking like anything until September, October last year.
Yep.
And then it was officially working. I remember our first test on the new system was like mid-November.
Yep.
And
the week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then now, fast forward to today, it went from you and let's call it C47 helping out. I mean, you hired us.
Oh, no.
But I try to stay modest here. I'm focused on you, brother. But now it's 7 people. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty like you're not leaving any grass to grow under your feet.
I have a timeline on what I want to do. I have more yesterdays than tomorrows in the insurance business. I have an amazing wife that I was so fortunate to meet later on in life, and she gifted me with our magnificent daughter Abigail, who's 3, and yes, I'm a little bit older. And
chasing her's a little less easy.
Right,
than you were like 30. Yeah.
In fact, we were late today because I had to go pick her up from school. But Sonia and Abby and Caitlin and Dylan, those are folks that I want to focus on.
Yeah.
And so I've got 7-8 years left.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I want to do.
I've always been impressed through this whole process how intentional you have been about building this business.
Yeah.
Because there was a time where I was like, why don't you just start another brokerage? And you're like, no. Partnering with a brokerage frees me.
Yeah.
And I, of course, I don't understand the industry like you do, but you had such clarity that the bog down that you would have personally by starting with all the legalese and all the extra investment and all of that.
And you live there.
Right.
I lived at TIG. I lived on Lee Road Saturdays, Sundays. Sadly, I did not have an opportunity to have my dad super involved with the agency. He passed before I could, get Tankersley Insurance Group up and going. But we had talked about it and things like that. But I remember I worked 101 weekends in a row, and the weekend I took off was when, it was the anniversary of my father's death, and I wanted to do something on that. But, you know, there is sacrifice of time. And for anybody listening out there who's in their 30s and they want to do this, you have a wonderful, wonderful quantity that a lot of folks I don't have, my age don't have, and that's time. Yeah. So,
right, but the sweat equity that goes into it to build this thing, the bootstrapping, to build your unicorn, it's not
to build
an
a
easy
unicorn.
thing. Yeah.
And you make a lot of mistakes. My God, I made a lot of mistakes. And then I would look at it and go, whew, how did you do that? Or why did you do that? But you learn from it.
Is there a favorite mistake that you tell people, an instructive one that we could, gift the listening audience? Like, man, I remember I did this. Oh, Nelly. And then I guess the question is, how'd you climb out of it? Okay. You don't have to share it. That's okay.
I think that one of the first things I did when I was just a producer at Johnston and Associates, and I decided they got bought by Likes Insurance, and I said, okay, I want to start my own agency. And I was extremely intentional, as you said, and had a timeline for Tankersley Insurance Group. And what I did initially was I went to my existing contact base, people that had worked with me and sent me business, and I would have lunch with them, or I would go by their office and I would say, I'm getting ready to start Tankersley Insurance Group. And I had my card and I would put it down on the table and I would say, is it me? Or is it the name behind my name? Is it the agency name? If it's the agency name, God bless you. Continue to work with these people. But if it's me, I need you when I open up this business. The overwhelming majority picked me versus the name on the agency. And by the way, Johnson and Associates was a fabulous agency. Jack Smith was the original owner. Dave and Sally bought it. They were President's Club Travelers Agency for many, many, many years, and Dave and Sally were wonderful to me. But I was super intentional about who can I count on. When I kind of got into Tankersley Insurance Group and got it going and it was starting to grow and things were good, I kind of got a little bit less intentional with the way I was marketing. I was still seeing the same people in the real estate and mortgage community that I needed to network with. But I kind of got fuzzy with my message. And I kind of snapped out of it after about a year and a half, 2 years. I said, what are you doing? Quit calling yourself an insurance advisor, an insurance consultant, or a personal lines insurance representative or principal agency owner. You're a guy who helps realtors and mortgage people get insurance for their clients so they can close and get paid. Stop trying to layer up with what you might perceive other people might perceive more beneficial, because it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So that was a mistake I made.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a bunch of mistakes fiscally with your allocating funds towards different marketing efforts and different things, and you didn't and you thought you knew the angle, and then once the money was spent and the ROI wasn't there, you learned from it as much as you could. And there's a lot of those stories.
And is the learning and remembering kind of the key is just keep taking notes?
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like a shot caller, Hey, I don't want to go down this road again. But it also allowed me to really sharpen up the angles on what was beneficial, what benefit did I provide to the people that were crucial to my success. And so it was a learning curve. I had some scar tissue, there's no doubt.
So we've gotten so much already. So if I called it right now, I feel like the audience has heard about longevity in the industry and some mistakes that you made and how to keeping focus. There's a lot of focus in this conversation.
And you want I got to tell the shoe story. I know we talked about that.
Well, it's the shoe story and the time you got held up.
Oh yeah,
my God, that one had me roaring. And you don't have to laugh at this, but think about the audience. Think about John got held up. And his response in that was remarkable. So start with the shoes. We're going to make people wait for the whole.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is my uphill both ways in the snow school story as a young entrepreneur with Tankersley Insurance Group. The first was I knew that I was going to be successful because I had figured out a way to get new business and I had the discipline and the work ethic to do it. And we've talked about that. But it's a while to build up a revenue stream from an insurance practice. It takes 6 months to a year to really get some revenue coming in. So you're eating a lot of macaroni without cheese, and you're not doing a lot of stuff for yourself. So I had a pair of loafers that I got when my dad passed away, and I wore those things every day, and I wore them out because I was out, hitting the streets, networking and marketing and things like that. And there were holes in the bottom of my loafers. Anybody that's had these loafers know that there are holes that, it's not like a hole, but it's compressed with the material. So when you push it, it goes all the way through the sole. So I didn't want to buy shoes for myself. I would buy black electric tape from Eckerd Drugstore. That'll date me some.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, Eckerd's used to be one of my clients until they didn't exist.
Okay.
Yeah,
and I would ball it up, and I would stick it in the compression holes in the bottom of my loafers so that I could buy another 6 weeks or a month or whatever it was before I could go to Ross or Marshall's back then and get a pair of shoes.
So the lesson in that one, folks, is patch your shoes and just keep walking.
Right. Or wear tennis shoes now versus loafers. But I always wanted to, look sharp, be sharp, that kind of thing to the best of my ability. And the second thing was, again, we start with the back in those days kind of thing. And a lot of insurance agents that have had success, and there are many, many colleagues and friends I have that have other agencies in Central Florida and around the state that can probably tell you the same amount of stories. You used to do your own premium drops at night. Now you can courier them in. Now everything's all electronic.
And by premium drop, you mean literally cash or checks that had to get dumped in at the bank.
That's right. Every night, Bank of America on Edgewater Drive in College Park, I had a leather pouch that the Bank of America gave me when I opened up my premium account, and it had a big zipper on it, and you would take cash from auto insurance payments. A lot of that was during the day, and you had some checks from title companies from the closings that you had from home insurance, and you'd zip it up and you'd fill out the voucher and the deposit slip, and then it was a night deposit because I could never make it to the bank by 5 because I was always working till 7, 8 o'clock at night. And so I pulled over to get into the parking lot, and it's pitch black. And I go to the night deposit thing where you lift the screen up and then you put the thing in and you pull it down. And there's a guy there with like a sharp, it looked like a spoon that he had sharpened. I'll never forget this. And I knew it was metal, it wasn't plastic. And he said, "Hey man, give me the bag with the cash. Give it to me." And there was nobody else around. And I just thought to myself, if you do this, you may not be able to come back fully when it comes to the ability to keep the agency running and fulfill the promise to the carriers that you represented. That's a whole nother story, maybe another podcast. And I said, this guy is going to take from you, and what he's taking from you is not something that you can afford to give. If I was doing that at FIS in 2014, I would have probably taken the watch off my wrist and said, here you go, bud.
Sure.
But at the moment, I just had a rudimentary feeling in my gut. And I just said, I can't give this to you because it's not mine to give. And if you take it, it's going to be worse for me. So let's get this over with. Thank God. He walked away because otherwise I could have been, on the side of the road in College Park with a spoon stuck in me or somewhere. But it was just a fight or flight mentality. And I am not tough, and I don't go out and seek fights and all that kind of crap. Please don't do this if you're listening or watching this podcast. But anyways, that was
the let's get this over with was the part that I was. You told it in a way that was a little bit more somber this time. Maybe we were drinking. I don't remember. But oh my God, just the let's get this over with. Just it sat there in silence for like 3 whole seconds, and then I lost.
Well, now a bunch of people know the story. I haven't told that story a bunch because nobody wants to hear that kind of stuff. But
your clarity in that moment's fascinating to me, though, because one, I know you knew it wasn't your money to give, not only for your own business, but it was other people's money.
It was other people's money.
They trusted you, and so I understand that you were protecting them, but you were very clearly protecting a future that you probably couldn't recreate or couldn't imagine in that moment recreating.
I felt like in that moment I would have damaged my relationships with the carriers that I was representing, and I was probably, obviously we had insurance and things like that for the office and valuable papers and cash, but there was a significant amount in there, and I thought the repercussions of this is going to be something that could damage your relationships with your insurance carriers. So
unreal.
I don't know how true that was at the time, but I never told anybody on the carrier side, hey, I got your money put in the bank.
I don't think that's something you go to the carrier and say, hey, you should appreciate me.
The other night. Right,
my way of delivering your money is maybe potentially unsafe, but I made it.
There's a lot of guys and ladies in the insurance biz. They've had agencies for many, many, many years, highly successful, wonderful people that can probably have a similar story.
I'm sure, undoubtedly. So let's get this over with. And John, I love hanging out with you. We need to do it more without microphones in front of us. Yeah. But this was good stuff, man.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me come on and share. And look, I'm going to do this because I mean this. It's from the heart. When I started on this journey last fall with GetHomeInsuranceNow.com, I knew that C47 was the right folks for me to deal with and be a client of, and we couldn't be more happy or proud.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate that. This journey, honestly, has been so exciting. Yeah. It's fun having these new ideas and helping you execute on them. There's something wild, wild west about it, even though it's a little safer than wild, wild west.
I was telling the guys yesterday we had a team meeting, and I said, we're really figuring out a lot of this stuff as we go along. It's all new. And that is exciting.
Yeah, build your wings on the way down.
Yep.
Yeah.